Back in the 1980s, I met a musician from Scotland, and for the sake of this podcast and for anonymity, we shall call him Fred. Now, Fred and I met many times over the space of a few years, and one of these occasions was the Pioneer Leaders Conference, which was held at a venue in Sussex in the UK. Now, Fred was a talented keyboard player, and we, with some other musicians, were given the responsibility for leading the times of sung worship at the conference. On one evening, we were getting ready to lead worship when Fred suggested that we try an experiment on the delegates. He told me that if you play a piece of music in a certain way, it will always generate a guaranteed response from those listening. You see, music is a very powerful manipulator of our emotions. As an example, he said, if you take the tune from the nursery rhyme Three Blind Mice, slow it down and play it like a worship song, those listening will begin to engage in spontaneous singing and worship. Singing in the Spirit was one of the features of our times of sung worship together. So Fred demonstrated this idea by playing me the melody, and I decided that we should try this as an experiment when the delegates arrived in the venue for the evening meeting. We'd see what would happen. So as the time for the start of the evening session approached, the room began to fill up, and the band began to play. We played Three Blind Mice in the style of a worship song, very slow and very worshipful. The delegates, who were all leaders of churches from around the UK, began to get stirred up by the music, as we thought they would. They'd gathered with an expectation of worshipping together, and one by one they began singing in the Spirit, and soon the room was filled with a heavenly sound. This was going better than I expected. I looked across at Fred, who by now was crying tears of laughter, and looked in serious danger of falling off his piano stool. And then the leader of the conference, Gerald Coates, arrived in the room. He was unaware of what we were playing, but saw what was happening, so he went to the microphone and encouraged everyone to continue raising their voices in worship. I was horrified. What had started as a simple prank was now turning into something serious. Here were 100 or more church leaders singing in worship to the tune of a nursery rhyme. The joke was getting out of hand. Eventually, after this had gone on for a while, one of the worship team members sidled up to Gerald and whispered in his ear, "Do you know what we are singing?" When recognition dawned, Gerald roared with laughter and gradually brought the room to silence and explained to the gathering what we had all been singing. All the delegates were highly amused, but during the rest of the conference, whenever we struck up a spontaneous melody, you could see them all mentally checking the tune to make sure we were not taking the mickey out of them once again. It just goes to show you how easy it is for those of us who lead worship to manipulate a desired response from the congregation. It's really important to guard against pressing musical or emotional buttons to generate a great time of sung worship. Our human skill should never be a substitute for the work and leading of the Holy Spirit. Thanks for listening to my confession.